This isn't rock bottom. That was years ago. This is what it looks like when you decide to start over, with nothing but a 2-year-old, a dream, and a storage unit. I had finally had enough. This is the moment I decided to give up my apartment, pack everything I own into a storage unit, and move into my car. It wasn't some spontaneous breakdown. It was a breaking point that had been building for years. And I knew the only way to really explain it was to tell the whole story. Before I explain how I got here, I need to go back. Not all the way back, because honestly, I don't remember much from my early childhood. But my first memory, I was 5. Me and my mom shared a bed. She wanted me there with her, said it was safer. My dad had this habit of rolling over on top of me in his sleep, so he started sleeping in a different bed. It was a weird situation, but it just was what it was. One night, he came in to tell us goodnight. He leaned in, kissed me on the forehead, and then whispered to my mom. He said he was having chest pains, said he thought he needed to go to the hospital. So the next day he went in, and when he came back, he told us he had lung cancer, and that he had 6 months to live. My mom's been an alcoholic my entire life. She was when she met my dad. She was when I was born. It wasn't something that got worse over time. It was something that was always bad, always there, always heavy. So when my dad got really sick, she didn't step up. She couldn't. And for the last 4.5 months of his life, she didn't do much to take care of him. So I did, at 5 years old. My kindergarten teacher started taking me to and from school. And in between that, I was the one taking care of my dad, taking care of my mom, taking care of myself. Every morning, I'd climb on the stove to reach his meds. I didn't even think about how dangerous it was. It's just what had to be done. Then I'd make breakfast for everyone, make sure everyone ate. After school, I'd come home and do it all again. Dinner, meds, check on my mom, make sure she was awake for at least a little while, drink at least a little water before she started drinking again. That was life for about 4 months. And in that time, my dad did everything he could to teach me what he could. He helped me with my schoolwork when he was strong enough. He taught me how to pay the bills using my mom's disability check. He taught me how to ride my bike 4 miles into town to buy food before she realized that there was money in the house. He taught me how to check if she was breathing and what to do if she wasn't. But the one thing he said that never left me, even though I forgot it for a while, was this. How someone treats you doesn't mean that's who you are. It's who they are. Always be the sweet princess you are, and don't let anyone ever change you. Always love yourself, no matter what. I didn't hold on to those words back then. Not really. But now I remember them like they were yesterday. He didn't make it 6 months. He made it 4.5. There were a few days he started feeling a little better. He even started meeting me at the back door again, just like he used to before he got sick. Then one day, he was standing there waiting for me, smiling. I opened the door, and he lit up. He got halfway through saying princess, and then his body jerked. He started shaking violently. He fell backwards. He was having a seizure. It wasn't the first one I'd seen. I'd been through this before, too many times. I went to every single doctor's appointment with him. I paid attention when my mom didn't, so I knew what to do. I dropped everything, ran to him, held his head, and yelled for my mom. But she didn't come. She was passed out. So I kept holding his head, and I looked at the clock. 5.5 minutes. I remember that number because I knew it was important. And as soon as the seizure stopped, before he was even fully awake, I called 911. When they showed up, he was conscious, but quiet. He didn't really speak until they had him loaded into the ambulance. Right before they shut the doors, he pulled off his oxygen mask, looked at me, and said, "I love you, princess. Take good care of your mom, and remember to love yourself too." And I think he knew that that was the last time he was going to see me. My heart stopped. I started crying. But in the moment, I don't think I fully understood. But now looking back, I think part of me did. I think part of me knew that was the end. The next day was Friday, September 12th, 2008. I stayed home from school because I knew my dad was in the hospital. I waited by the phone all day. I tried to keep my mom awake, but it didn't work. She drank her little heart away, like she always did, and eventually passed out cold. So when the phone finally rang, I was the one who answered. I was 5 years old. It was the doctor, and he asked to speak to my mom. And I remember telling him, "She's not gonna wake up. Just tell me what's going on with my dad and I'll call my sister." See, at the time, I didn't understand why my sister wasn't around more, why it felt like I was doing everything alone. But now, I know. She was 21 years older than me. She was on drugs, had her own life, and my dad wasn't her dad. More on her later. But in that moment, I was begging, just please, tell me what's happening. And all he said was, "You need to wake your mom or call your sister and you need to get here soon." I remember my whole body went still. Then I started crying, panicking. I ran to my mom, tried shaking her, yelling for her. Nothing. So I picked up the phone and called my sister. She came to the house to get me, dropped my brother-in-law off to try and wake my mom, and took me straight to the hospital. When we got there, I walked into the room and everything felt heavy. My dad was laying in the bed. His skin looked pale. He was hooked up to so many machines. But he looked peaceful, almost like he was just sleeping. I climbed into bed with him, laid my head on his chest, and he gave the smallest squeeze. And I told him I loved him, and cried. I remember it like it just happened yesterday, the way his chest rose, shaky and slow, then fell. And then nothing. The machine started screaming, the nurse rushed in, turned everything off, and looked at my sister. "He's gone," she said. Time of death, 2:52 p.m. And then my mom walked in. She was still drunk, barely standing. She stumbled over, started flicking his eyelids, screaming, "He's still awake, he's still alive, the nurses are lying, get someone in here." And I had to look her in the eyes and say, "No, Mom, you're doing that." My sister ran into the room and pulled her out. My brother-in-law picked me up and carried me away from the screaming, away from the machines, away from him. And that was the last time I saw him. A couple months after my dad passed, we moved in with my godfather. He had been my dad's best friend for years, so you'd think that maybe things got better. But they didn't. My mom was still an extreme alcoholic, and I think she took my dad's death harder than anyone realized. In a roundabout way, I think she blamed herself for not being there for him, and because I was there for him, I think she took that anger out on me. Looking back, I think that's where a lot of our issues started. She had always been a drinker, and with my brother and sister, yeah, she could be emotionally abusive, but it was different with me. It was more intense, more cruel, more constant. It hit a different kind of extreme. Now, I won't lie, our basic needs were met. We were mostly taken care of. We had a roof, we had food, but emotionally, I was drowning. My godfather worked nights, so it was just me and my mom a lot of the time. And when she wasn't passed out drunk, she was lashing out. We spent a lot of time together, but not in the way a child should spend time with their mother. And then there were the issues with my godfather himself. Issues I didn't even have the words for at the time, but I knew they weren't right. What I didn't realize when we moved in was that I wasn't just walking into a house with emotional abuse. I was walking into something much darker. Because not long after we moved in, my godfather started using me as his own pleasure. And it became routine. Every morning, before school, he would bring me to his room, tell me I needed to do him a favor, and it would feel good for me too. The simple truth, I was having sex with a grown 45-plus-year-old man. And I was just a child. 5, 6, 7, 8. I didn't understand why, but I knew it was wrong. And if I said I didn't like it, or said I didn't want to, it became less of a favor. He made it clear that if I didn't make him feel good and make him believe I enjoyed it, I wouldn't be allowed to eat, or get a ride to school, or do anything. It was control. It was silence. And it was happening in the same house where I was supposed to be safe. I tried to tell my mom, I really did, but she didn't believe me. She said I was being dramatic, that I wanted attention, that he was helping us, that I needed to stop causing problems. So I stopped telling her. And that silence, it stayed with me for years. But just because I didn't speak about it, doesn't mean it didn't shape me. It shaped everything. For 4 years. Every day I woke up in that house and carried it all. The fear, the silence, the shame. And then one day out of the blue, my godfather told my mom he was getting ready to lose the house. That we needed to figure something else out. At the time, we were living in Arizona, and my sister had moved to Idaho about 2 years earlier. She was living in a log cabin with her husband, her 5 kids, and her best friend's whole family, too. It was a full house, but when my mom asked if we could come stay with them just until we got back on our feet, my sister said yes, because I was involved. So we packed everything we could carry into a few suitcases, just clothes and a couple toys. That was it. We left behind everything. My friends, my school, the little bits of normalcy I had. But I also left behind the abuse that didn't just break me when it happened. It kept breaking me for years. Not in the moment, but later, when I was finally old enough to understand the weight of what I was carrying, and everything it had taken from me. And even at 8, I knew that alone was worth leaving everything else behind. Although it wasn't better. It was just a different form of hell. The scenery changed, but the chaos stayed. My sister was still on and off drugs at that point, and so was just about everyone else in the house. And this is around the time I believe my mom started using too. I can't say for certain, even now, but things started to shift. She started to change, and not for the better. There were parties every weekend. The music, the drinking, the noise, it never stopped. My brother-in-law and my sister both worked. My mom didn't. The other 2 adults in the house worked too, but none of them were really present for the kids. And with 5 of my nephews in the house, 4 of them younger than me, the responsibility fell on me. So I took care of them. I made breakfast. I made dinner. I made sure homework got done. I made sure they got their baths. I made sure everything that needed to happen, happened. Because no one else would. I had gone from caring for my dying father to being an emotionally manipulated sex toy, to suddenly being the caregiver to 4 kids that weren't even mine, by the time I was even 9 years old. But in that house, there was never peace. It was like living in a war zone. People were always drinking, always high, always fighting. Fistfights would break out in the living room, screaming matches shook the walls. I'd have to grab the kids and hide them away just to keep them from seeing it all, from hearing the things no child should hear. I watched my sister pin our mom against the wall. I saw blood, I saw broken glass, I saw things I'll never be able to forget. And as twisted as it sounds, I still tried to protect my mom. Because in my eyes back then, she was still my mom. I didn't fully understand how wrong it all was. I hadn't learned yet that love isn't supposed to hurt like that. So I defended her. I didn't know any better. But the truth is, I was just a little kid trying to clean up after adults who chose chaos over care. Driving drunk people home, cleaning puke off the floor, taking care of crying toddlers while the adults partied until the sun came up, trying to keep the house from burning down, metaphorically and literally. It was like the Gallagher house from Shameless, but worse. Because this one was real, and I couldn't change the channel. Eventually, my sister lost her job at the dog shelter, and with that, we all lost the house. Everything we had built, even if it was chaotic, even if it was loud and messy and far from perfect, disappeared almost overnight. My mom didn't really have a plan, she never really did. So we ended up moving in with some boyfriend she had at the time. Someone I barely knew in a house that didn't feel like ours. It was just me and her again. Except by this point, she wasn't even really her anymore. The drinking had gotten worse, her anger was sharper, her sadness was heavier, and all of it landed on me. My sister and the kids moved about 45 minutes away, but honestly, it felt like a different world. And I was still just a kid, trying to survive in a place that didn't feel safe, with a mom who barely saw me as her daughter anymore, if she ever even did. We moved in with one of my mom's boyfriends, a man who, on the surface, seemed better than the others she had been with, but that didn't mean things got easier. Having someone else around didn't fix the chaos. He wanted to be the father I never really had, a role I desperately needed, but that came wrapped in confusion and fear. At 10, almost 11 years old, I wasn't ready for a man trying to take control of my life, trying to force order where there was none before. He was controlling in ways that made me feel small and powerless. And while he saw my mom's drinking for what it was, he didn't stop it. He enabled it. He bought her the alcohol, made excuses for her behavior, brushed off the pain it caused me. When she lashed out, when she hurt me with words or silence, he found reasons to justify it. She had a tough day. She's stressed. You made her angry. And the blame always came back to me. And so, at 10 years old, I sank into a darkness so deep it swallowed me whole. A depression so heavy it crushed my chest and stole my breath. I was drowning in self-hate, drowning in shame. Every hateful word they said, every cruel look, every time I was told I was worthless, I believed it. I blamed myself for everything that went wrong in my life. I couldn't see a way out. Because from the people who were supposed to love me, I only heard one thing. You are broken. You are the problem. You are nothing. And that belief, that poisonous lie, became my entire world for the last 12 years. This deep, crushing depression completely took over my life. It wasn't just sadness, it became the lens through which I saw everything. It shaped my choices, my reactions, the way I moved through the world. So many of the things that happened next were completely out of my control. But looking back now, I also see moments where, had I not already been so broken, so defeated, I might have responded differently. Maybe things could have turned out differently if I had known how to cope, if I had even felt like I deserved to. And in the middle of all of that, I started hurting myself. Cutting became a secret language, one only I understood, a way to release pain that had no words. The sting became proof that I could still feel, the blood a sign I was still alive. It was a punishment I thought I deserved, a way to deal with the shame, the blame, and the emptiness I felt every single day. At first I tried to hide it. Part of me truly didn't want anyone to see. But somewhere, deep down, another part of me, the part that had gone so long without being seen or truly cared for, started to realize that those scars got attention. Not all the time and not always the kind I wanted, but they made people stop. They made people worry. They made people notice. And even though I didn't start doing it for attention, once that connection was made, it stuck with me. And the hardest part is that it didn't just hurt me. It affected everyone around me. Friends who didn't know what to say, adults who felt helpless, people who carried guilt they didn't deserve. My pain bled into other people's lives, and I didn't understand the weight of that until much later. I thought I was suffering alone, but in reality the pain echoed, it spread. And now looking back, I wish I had realized sooner just how much of an impact it had beyond me. Eventually, after everything, after all the yelling, the drinking, the excuses, the chaos, her boyfriend lost his house too. And just like she always did, my mom bailed. She had used him, drained him dry, and once he had nothing left to offer, she was gone. He still tries to text me sometimes like he wants to check in or like we still have some kind of bond, but we don't. They never got back together. Not really. After that, my mom finally got her own place. A low-income apartment, $300 a month. That's when people started saying things like, "At least now you have stability." But what they didn't see was what that little apartment turned into. It wasn't safety. It wasn't peace. It was just a new backdrop for the same nightmare. From 11 to 13, that apartment was where I became the adult. I paid the bills. I did the shopping. I budgeted the food stamps. I made sure there was electricity, water, groceries. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My dad had taught me how to survive, and I was surviving, just barely, without him. Men came and went constantly, strangers in my home, strangers in my space, strangers in my nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with someone's hands on me, or I'd wake up to screaming, to threats, to the sound of my mom crying, or worse, not crying. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to me just to feel like I had some control. One night, one of those men got on top of me while I was sleeping. I woke up screaming. My mom came running, and instead of protecting me, she blamed me. Then she pushed me. I went down the stairs, I broke my ribs, and after that, I stopped sleeping, or tried to. I'd go days without rest, just waiting until my body couldn't take it anymore and gave out. And right around the beginning, when we first moved in, that was when I met Whitney. It started simple. I needed a can opener to cook dinner for me and my mom. She was my neighbor, a single mom with a 2-year-old daughter. We exchanged a few things here and there, and over time, I started babysitting for her. We got closer. But it wasn't until months later that she really started seeing it, what I was dealing with. But when she saw it, she never looked away. One day, she asked me, "Are things okay at home?" And I tried to lie, but she didn't let me. She asked again, and again, and again, until finally I broke. She was the first person to ever tell me, "You're not crazy, you're not the problem, you don't deserve this." She couldn't take me in, not then, but she found a way to help. Any excuse, babysitting, cleaning, helping her run errands, just something. Anything to get me out of that house. And for a little while, she became my safe place. We grew close, really close, but life got hard for her too, and we drifted. And when she was gone, everything with my mom got so much worse. There were nights where home stopped feeling like home and started feeling like a trap. One night in particular, it was the middle of winter, Idaho winter. The kind that sinks its teeth into you and doesn't let go. 5 degrees, maybe less. Wind chill made it feel even colder. There was snow on the ground, in the air. I was in bed, in shorts and a t-shirt. We got into a fight. I don't even remember what it was about. But I remember her yelling. I remember the door slamming and then locking behind me. She told me to get out, and then she meant it. She told me if I tried to run, she'd call the cops, that I'd be labeled as a runaway, that I'd get sent to juvie, that I'd ruin my whole future before I even had one. And at 12, I didn't know what to believe, so I believed her. I didn't run. I didn't even scream. I just stayed on the porch, in the same shorts, the same t-shirt, no coat, no blanket, no shoes that first night, no food, no water, for 4 straight days. I kept moving at first, pacing, walking circles, rubbing my arms to stay warm. But eventually I was too tired, too cold, too empty. By the 3rd night, my whole body was trembling so violently I couldn't hold still even if I tried. My muscles were locking up, my speech was slurred. I felt sick to my stomach every time I swallowed. By the 4th day, my skin was gray. My fingers were numb. My thoughts didn't feel like my own anymore. I had entered stage 2 hypothermia, core body temperature below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Shivering turns to silent. Blood leaves your hands and feet to protect your vital organs. Everything slows down, including your brain. You stop realizing how close you are to death. And I was close. I tried slipping into the laundry room just to warm up, but I couldn't stay more than a few minutes before I got screamed at again. I'd sit there shaking just long enough to feel my toes again before I got forced right back out. And still, I stayed. Because somehow the fear of disappearing felt bigger than the hell I was already in. And here's the part that never stops haunting me. I never went to the hospital. I never got checked out. I didn't even get a blanket. When she finally let me back inside, I crawled into bed and just laid there for days. I threw up over and over. I drank so much water my stomach hurt I couldn't think, couldn't move, couldn't stop sleeping. And that's how I recovered. No medical care, no asking if I was okay, just time and silence. I shouldn't have survived that, but I did, and nobody even noticed. That was the worst time she locked me out, but it wasn't the only time, and eventually, those nights split into something much darker. Men coming in and out of the house, me chasing them away with a baseball bat like I was some kind of guard dog, like that was normal. Me and my mom fighting constantly, but it wasn't just yelling anymore. I'd end up in the corner, hugging my knees, sobbing, terrified she might finally snap. Because up until then, she only hit me when it had to do with men. Never when it was just us. Until the night that changed everything. I had made dinner, spaghetti, but I used sausage instead of hamburger. And that was all it took, that tiny decision. That was the trigger. She lost it. Not just throwing the plate, she picked up the pot, the one I'd strained the noodles over, still full of scalding water, and she poured it on me. The boiling water hit my skin and I screamed. And then she hit me. Once, twice, 3 times until I fell back on the couch, trembling, crying, burning. And in that moment, something inside me shattered. It wasn't just the pain. It was the complete collapse of any hope I had left. That night, I wanted to die. Not just a passing thought, not just wishing I could disappear, I meant it. But there was one person who saved me that night. A friend. I told her what happened. I told her I didn't want to be there anymore. And she stayed on the phone with me until 5 a.m. She didn't let me go. She didn't try to fix me. She just stayed. She held my heart together with her words while it tried to fall apart. And somehow I got dressed for school. I left early just to get away. And that day she told the counselor and saved my life a second time. But the counselor had to call my mom. My sister showed up, took the door off my room, told me I wasn't allowed to think like that, told me there were better ways to cope. But she never asked why. Never asked what I was living through. Never asked what had finally pushed me to that edge. Then she left, and I was alone. Again. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom. I ran a bath, not because I wanted comfort, but because I didn't know where else to go. I cried silently into the water, and then I heard the door unlock. She'd picked it with a bobby pin. Drunk, stumbling, slurring her words. She looked me in the eyes and said, "If you want to kill yourself so bad, go ahead. It'd be a breath of fresh air for me, and no one else cares anyway." Day 1 was spaghetti. A fight over dinner that turned violent, burns covering the front of my body. Day 2, things got worse. She told me to take my own life. And day 3, I don't know what she planned that night. There were multiple men in the house. I don't know why. I still can't fully grasp it. All I remember is the fear gripping my chest so tightly I could barely breathe. I was upstairs in my room, curled up in the dark, pretending to be invisible. Wide awake, but trying to hide from the chaos. And then the sounds started. Glass smashing, angry shouting, loud crashes that shook the walls. I knew something was terribly wrong. I ran down the stairs, heart pounding like a war drum in my ears, and froze. There she was, my mom, pinned against the wall, her throat caught in the hands of 3 men, her eyes wild, desperate, but also terrified. Everything inside me shattered. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed the only weapons I had, 2 heavy metal baseball bats that seemed to be my only protection in that house. My hands trembled as I gripped them, but the fear for her, and for myself, gave me strength I didn't know I had. I ran back down, shouting, swinging, chasing those men out of the house. 5, maybe more, I don't know exactly. I only know I had to fight. I had to fight like my life depended on it, because in that moment, it did. I only swung the bats twice, but just the sound and the anger in me were enough to send them fleeing. I was only 12 years old. The next morning, feeling broken and raw, I reached out to Whitney, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the whole story. I told her the simplest truth I could. My mom had hit me over a plate of spaghetti. It wasn't everything. It was barely scratching at the surface, but it was all I could say. Whitney, always kind, believed my mom had only hurt me with words,
The constant insults, the cruelty, the feeling that I was worthless, fat, ugly, her biggest mistake. She didn't know the darkness I was living in. They sat on the phone with me, Whitney and Brett, her husband, voices steady and warm, offering me comfort, letting me know I wasn't alone. They invited me to their kid's birthday party, promising me they'd come get me, a lifeline in the middle of the storm. That night, after the house fell silent, they asked me the question that changed everything. Would I want them to file for custody? At first, I was shocked. Was that even possible? They said they wouldn't keep me from my mom if I wanted to stay in touch. It would be my choice, but if I needed out, if I wanted to escape, they could give me that freedom. For the first time in what felt like forever, a fragile thread of hope curled inside my chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the nightmare. Things didn't magically get easier when I asked for help, and they didn't entirely get better later on either, but they did get a little better. And after what I'd been through, even a little better felt like a miracle. I had told Whitney and Brett I wanted out. Needed out. So they filed for custody. But custody doesn't happen with the snap of your fingers. It's a process. Someone had to serve my mom the papers. So they had a friend go do it. She walked into the house holding that envelope, and the moment she realized what it was, she completely lost it. She flipped from confusion to heartbreak to rage within minutes. She accused me of not loving her, told me I was going to be the reason she died, that I was all she had left since Dad left, that she hated her life because of me. Which wasn't even new, honestly. That was more familiar than any I love you ever was. Normally she'd say things like how I ruined her life, how it was a mistake, how she wished it had been menopause, not a pregnancy. But this time she twisted it into a guilt trip, like I was abandoning her after everything. And then it snapped. If you want to go so bad, then go, she screamed. Pack your bags and get the out of my house. So I did. I grabbed the closest trash bag I could find and started stuffing clothes into it. I called Whitney, told her what happened, and she said she was on her way. But the second my mom saw me actually packing, she lost it. She came at me, angry, wild, unpredictable. I was scared. So I threw the bag out our second-story window, and a neighbor, someone new who'd just moved in, was outside and caught it for me. I bolted, ran past my mom, down the stairs, out the front door, and straight to that neighbor's place. She let me inside and locked the door. My mom didn't try to follow. I think she knew she crossed a line now that someone else had seen. Whitney came and picked me up, and I stayed with her. I finally felt like I could breathe, even if just a little. But peace doesn't last when there's no legal custody. About a week and a half later, my mom texted Whitney saying she was coming to get me. Court was still 3 weeks away, so there was nothing Whitney could legally do to stop her. So she said, okay, be here before 7 p.m. And then she looked at me, hugged me. We cried, and she said she was sorry, that it would only be temporary. And that night, I barely slept. The next night, my mom didn't show up until 10 p.m. Brett answered the door, calm but firm. You were told to be here by 7, he said. The kids are asleep, can't come in. She argued, but he stood his ground. If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops, and I will get my gun. So she left. But the next day, I was pulled out of my last hour class. They said my ride was on their way, and I knew it was my mom. I explained everything, said I didn't feel safe, that there was a custody case coming up. I begged them not to make me go. But because she still was legally my mom, they said they had no choice. So when I saw her walk through the front doors of the school, I panicked. Fight or flight, and I ran. Out of the office, through the halls. The bell had just rung, so the entire school saw it. My mom chasing after me, screaming my name, screaming every horrible thing she could think of. Worthless piece of ungrateful, loud, public, ugly. And after that, school was hell. Some people pitied me. Most didn't. Kids can be cruel. And they echoed her words, repeated them, used them like weapons. I was only a freshman. It got so bad that even when I tried to make new friends, it felt like I was just dragging them down. I didn't understand it at the time, but looking back, I see how much I was bleeding all over people who were too young to carry that kind of weight. I wasn't cycling through friends because they didn't care. I was cycling through them because they were exhausted, because they were 14 and I was bringing them trauma they didn't know how to hold. And still, some stayed, even when they didn't have to. I'd push them away thinking I was protecting them, not realizing that even the act of disappearing was another kind of hurt.
Take a minute, breathe, get a drink of water, maybe a snack. But if this part hit, stay with me, because the story is not over yet. I promise it does end up eventually ending on a much happier note. So go to the next part. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Comment something, leave a like, share. Help me get my story out there. Thank you guys.